This is another writing that a member of the group has asked me to have a look at, and it's in response to a writing stimulus I posted to the Facebook group fairly recently. Every cloud has a silver lining, right? So in interpreting that message, the first thing you want to do is be able to say, well, when something bad happens, something good could come of it, all right? So actually a good word to know straight away when thinking about a saying like that would be the word ostensible, which means something looks a certain way, but it actually isn't, right? So that'd be that could also be applied to the one, don't judge a book by its cover, right? Whereas, someone might look stupid, but actually they're really, really clever, right? All right, so every cloud has a silver lining. After the stadium was closed, everyone forgot about it. All right, it's a nice, engaging introductory sentence. All right, here's a big problem. Its walls. All right, we don't need the apostrophe in this it's, all right, because it's not it is walls or it has walls, because that wouldn't make sense in this context. You don't need the apostrophe when you're talking about possession, all right? So you just go its walls. Right, I think I'll post an activity on this to the group later about identifying when to use the two types of its, because this is a really common error, all right? And you've got to get your child to get into the habit of proofreading the its and its, the your and your, which is basically the same as its and its. One is for possession and one is a contraction of you are. And there, and there. All right, the three forms of there, because they all sound the same. Yeah, children get really confused with those. So I'll post some activities to do with those later. Right, its walls began to crumble and it became blanketed, yeah, in an extremely dense layer of dust. All right, because this is a sort of a negative description, I'd probably change the word blanketed. Just use a more negative verb. Cloaked, cloaked in an extremely dense layer, or shrouded, right? Shrouded's even more negative, really has a sort of eerie or ominous sense to it. The once famous stadium that people glorified, good, nice word, glorified. As you refine your vocabulary, you could probably even improve that more. They venerated it. Was now a heap of piled junk. All right, so normally I'd say this part of the description is too opposite in tone. You've gone from glorified to heap of piled junk, but because of the effect of it, because it's a juxtaposition, it was this and now it's this, I don't think it's so bad, all right? But I might still try and use a better word than, say, junk. I might use a word that's quite difficult to spell, like debris, or even stronger, detritus, right? So if you knew that word, and you could throw in a good adjective like obsolete, right? It was now a heap, heap, pile. I mean, it's still going to be quite colloquial, isn't it? So it's not a bad opening, all right? Sad, seeing what's happened, all right? Make sure you put your punctuation in there, right? It should be a full stop there. Ben and his dad were at the entrance of the old stadium. Yeah, do a better word than innovated. Sorry, I was thinking the opposite there. Obsolete, antiquated, archaic, right? Even ancient is probably better than old, but probably obsolete would be the best word to use there. And now here we're missing the D, right? Used. It should be used, not use. It's part used to gleam like gold. All right, nice simile and nice alliteration. King Stadium. Yeah, even the name denotes that. So it's an interesting name for the stadium. Ben's father exclaimed, "Good, good. He's matched the dialogue tag with the punctuation." But now it's, and this is the correct it's. See, it is more like junk. Okay, so repeated junk. Yeah, so there you could, I would use junk in dialogue. All right, so yeah, Ben's dad probably would say junk when you're the narrator, right? Because the narrator can be omniscient and knows everything. Yeah, you can use debris and detritus or refuse or some fancier word. That's something I teach children to do. You know, when you've got a narrator, make use of it. That's when you use all your fancy vocabulary words, because it's not believable for, say, a little kid like Ben to be using, you know, grandiloquent verbiage. So yeah, let the narrator do that, and that's perfectly believable then. All right, it's more like junk. He sobbed. Good. Another dialogue. Good dialogue tag there. Remember that though, again, to close your punctuation inside there. So there should be some, is it? It's more like junk. Probably just a full stop's fine there. Do you think that we can fix King Stadium? Asked Ben. All right, and you could perhaps add an adverb there. How did Ben ask? You know, what sort of mood is Ben in there? Just to add a little bit more to it. I would say he's quite hopeful. So yeah, you could ask that. Ask Ben hopefully. A metal sheet fell to the floor with a heavy rattle. See, I like that action. I like that a lot. That's very good. Because the action emphasizes what Ben has just asked about. You know, it's as if the stadium itself is answering, no, right? No, it's not going to happen. So it's good. I don't know. I don't think you need to add anything to there, but you could perhaps change that sentence a little bit. A metal sheet fell to the floor with a heavy rattle, comma, as if in answer to Ben. Okay, so just to be very clear that you've personified the stadium. Only the government can fix King Stadium, whispered. Good, again, another good dialogue tag. Ben's dad. Sadly, yeah, see, that's what, see, there's a good use of the adverb. All right, so how did Ben ask? How does Ben's dad answer? And we're not the govern. All right, so this needs an ellipsis, I think, or so, you know, why has the word stopped there in mid-sentence, so you need to indicate why that has happened. He let out a miniature. Good, that's good, and you spelled it correctly as well. Spelled miniature correct. Many people leave out the A in miniature. He let out a miniature, and it should be a, and now that I look at it again, I can't see a miniature sigh, yeah? So he let out a miniature sigh, then started to leave with Ben close behind. And you could even again have Ben, you could have Ben dragging, trudging close behind, right? You know, to convey how Ben feels. He's probably not very happy at all. A nearby parking ranger heard there, yeah, and that's the correct there, so that's good, whole conversation, which had plaster. Now this student did this last time. This needs to be past tense, all right? You need an ED at the end there, which had plastered a frown on his face. All right, it's not a bad metaphor. Right, it's a bit colloquial, but yeah, it's not bad. He understands how to use that. It must be past tense. Still, this wasn't the first time he had heard this kind of conversation. All right, but let's not repeat conversation. Let's go with a synonym. Discussion, dialogue. All right, you see how easy it is to fit some more words in there. All right, rather than just repeating the same one over and over. About King Stadium. Wow, cheered Ben. 2 months. All right, so this is 2 months later. 2 months had passed, and the government, and he's spelling government correctly, which is good. That's a very common error, along with environment, had fixed King Stadium. After the months of dreary, yeah, you see, dreary is an adjective you need to describe something. All right, after the dreary months, the months of dreary is not phrased correctly. It's a good word, all right. Good came back. Yeah, now you would want, you know, good returned. Good, what's a good word? You know, do a metaphor about good or personify good. Good had returned to the land, or good had, yeah, have to think about that one. Good had embraced us again after turning its back on us. All right, so the thing with this closing part is it's too abrupt, all right, because you've just gone from having the problem and then, oh, it just gets solved, all right, so, and there's no reason why, just what, that the government is benevolent, you know, doesn't really fit the tone of the story or the theme of the story. So I think what you should do here is, so when they leave, all right, they leave. Well, I guess the inference is that the parking ranger perhaps had something to do with it. What, he's told the government or something? That inference is a little bit too vague, all right, to be taken seriously there. I think what should happen is as they drive away, they see, some homeless people or something. Ben says, "Oh, look at how many homeless people there are in the city now, Dad." And Ben's dad says, like, "Oh yeah, it's a real shame, isn't it?" And you start to think then, what do you need more? Housing in a society or a stadium, right? King Stadium. And perhaps you could then go to a few months later and have the government or you don't even have to talk about that. You just, Ben and his dad are driving past the stadium, say 6 months later, and there's a homeless shelter being built there, right? And they can think, oh, I miss King Stadium, but it's nice to see the government looking after the people, right? And then you're very clearly addressing the theme of every cloud has a silver lining. All right, so overall, I thought this writing was about. Oh, and I just noticed now I missed an error here right at the start. Extremely. Okay, he's forgotten to put the e in there. Okay, it needs to be extreme, and then you add ly. Okay, so don't. That's extremely, right? An extremely dense layer. That should be extremely. So look, even if you're getting the student to write here for 20 minutes, as we can see here, all right, 7:20 to 7:40, and they don't have time to proofread within that, please let them still proofread every piece of writing they do. My experience is with most children, they don't care that much about their writing. I know it sounds a bit harsh, but that's my experience. You've got to force them to proofread, find all of the mistakes. So I'm pretty sure he would find extremely, even the it's one he would probably identify if you force him to read over it. So even if he runs out of time, make him spend 5 minutes like I've just done here, where I've gone over everything. Think about, oh yeah, I repeated this word, right? I could change that word if I had more time. And gradually, as you write more, you become more cognizant of that. You're like, oh, I already used that word. Because in writing, you've got time to do that, right? Overall, I mean, when you're speaking, you often will say the same things over and over and over. And see, I even use the word things there, right? Which I encourage children to never do in writing. See, if I was writing, I would say utter the same phrases, because you've got the ability to go back there and edit yourself. All right, I'll post some resources about the problems with homophones, the its and its shortly. But I think everyone needs to get their children to pay attention to that error because it is really common.